Hi, everyone. You're watching Simply SCAdian, no title required, and this is Zoph. I'm going to hand things over to Lucas, who is going to do his stuff while I do tech girl stuff. Take it away,
All right.
Lucas.
All right. Welcome to Simply SCAdian, no title required. We are fastly moving through season 3, everybody, and we're coming up on the end of the season. So I just want to remind everybody that if you have some folks you think we should talk to, you need to reach out to us via the Facebook page, or if you can find us, in the reel. Please reach out to us and let us know who we should be talking to. Now, who are those people? That's the question you would ask next. Well, those people are people without peerage. Again, we love our people who have worked real hard to get where they are. But the vast majority of the SCA are people who are just working every day on the things that they like, and maybe they've achieved a level and maybe they haven't. And those people are very knowledgeable, and we want to hear from those people because we hear from the other people all the time. So we want to hear them. So whether they're fighters or bards or brewers or vintners, or they do feasts, or we've had all manner, or making garb, or whatever it is, whatever their passion is in the SCA, we want to talk about it. All right. So make sure you hit up that Facebook page. We will go dark in July and August, and then pick up the show for season 4 in September. So hopefully you can give us a lot of people in the interim. But today we have our guest. So let me run through this. The noble Efenwealt Wystle, hailing from the barony of Windmaster's Hill, smack dab in the middle of Atlantia, has been playing in the SCA since 1989. A minstrel by trade and a fool in his spare time, and he seems to have a great deal of spare time. Efenwealt likes to muck about with medieval and Renaissance music, as well as Celtic, folk, SCA bardic material. Historically, his favorite time period is the late 12th century, England and France, because of his interest in Henry II and Eleanor of Aquitaine. He dabbles in a bunch of instruments, but is mostly known for his singing and playing folk guitar. Over the decade, he's held some local offices, run some events, recorded and produced some music, taught some classes, done some theater, and fought with a variety of weapons forms, wreaked havoc, sown the seeds of chaos, gotten some awards, and generally had a good time. He and his wife, Einor, spend most of their time at events, selling cool stuff from their booth, Camelot Treasures. Check it out the next time you are at an event, particularly Penzig. And he lives with his family in North Carolina, writing, managing healthcare, communications, and campaigns for pharmaceutical research studies. Also sings and plays rhythm guitar with their family band, the Blibbering Humdingers, playing goofy nerd rock and fandom conventions, libraries, and such. I'm a big fan. I listen all the time. Now and then, he even gets professional gigs making music for commercials. So, with all of that ado, welcome to the show, Efenwealt.
Hello. And just one teeny thing. My wife's name is pronounced Enor.
Enor. Yeah, listen, I'm no.
It's okay. No big deal. It's weird French crap. Yep.
French.
Yeah. Listen, at least
goddamn French have a different word for everything.
World. I'm sorry to go with the SCA world, but at least it's not Welsh.
All right. So, Efenwealt, how did you find the SCA?
How did I find the SCA? Well, I long had an interest. I played all the Dungeons and the Dragons and was into Tolkien and Narnia and all that crap as a teenager. But one summer, the summer of '89 of all times, some local SCAdians, Anna and Donald are their names. They still play a little bit. I see them at Penzig now and then. They actually had a booth at our local flea market where they were selling garb and toy weapons and, medievalish kind of SCAdian kind of stuff. And I commissioned a shirt that Anna made. And they told me all about this. It's like, well, you should learn about the SCA, blah, blah, blah. The typical SCAdian BS that people spit out. And then my first day of classes that following semester, about a month or so later, I saw a guy stapling up posters on one of the bulletin boards. And I was like, hey, I know about that. And so I started going to the local meetings at NC State here in Raleigh and stuck with it and made friends, and girls pinched my butt, and it was fun.
So how did you fall into music, or were you a musician before you joined the SCA?
I had played in school band in elementary and middle school, got out of it in high school, but then I had really gotten into Jethro Tull and Fairport Convention and Steel Eye Span and some English folk rock stuff. And I was like, I'm gonna get a guitar, and I ended up, I had an old saxophone that I traded for a flute, and I dug out my old recorder from elementary school and started playing that again. And then, you know, the SCA, oh my gosh, and people who were into that kind of music too. My very first event, the very first Bardic Circle I went to, I played some Jethro Tull on my flute because I'm that kind of nerd. And people didn't chase me away.
How long did it take you to learn the guitar?
It's been 30 some years, 35 years, and you'd think I'd be better. So you're always learning guitar. If you play an instrument, you're always learning that instrument. So I've slowed down, and I had a burst about 5 or 6 years ago where I was actually like learning to do new things on the guitar, but that's sort of slowed down, and now I just sort of pick it up and play it. I don't think of myself as a guitarist. It's the guitar is an instrument I play so that to fill out the sound of whatever I'm doing, because I hate singing a cappella. It's very nerve-wracking for me to do a cappella work.
That's why I learned the ukulele, so that I could stay on pitch. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that it helps with that too. Yeah.
Yeah.
So then you consider yourself a vocalist then? That's the primary thing, or
No, I think of myself as a performer before anything else. I don't think of myself as a flautist, even though I play flute. I don't think of myself as a recorder player, even though I dabble in all kinds of woodwinds, chrome horns, and saxophone, and whatever I can get my hands on. And even like I said, I don't think of myself as a guitarist or even really as a musician. And I'm sure there's plenty of people who also don't think of me as a musician.
I mean, I kind of get what you're saying there, and you're poking fun at yourself, but I mean, I've seen the show, you know what I mean, and I understand what you're saying is that it's much more of a performance piece than anything else. Like you have to, not only are you singing the song, but everything's in character and everything feels like a story. So that takes real talent. So people can just sing a song, but in order to kind of absorb that identity and then sing from a perspective is very hard. So don't sell yourself too short.
No, that's why I said music is a tool for me for performing, and it's probably the most approachable for me. Like memorizing lines and going out on a stage and trying to deliver those lines scares the living bejesus out of me. I cannot do it. I've recently gotten into some commedia the last few years, and that's been a lot of fun. And that's about as scary as I want to get. I still get super nervous going out and remembering, oh my God, what do I have to get done in this scene? Who's doing what? What if they don't remember the beats of the story? How do I get, it's a lot more alive kind of thing, but there's a lot more forgiveness for things going wrong.
I think the audience.
But what could possibly go wrong?
Right, the audience laughs harder when things go wrong. So
yeah.
What made you decide to start recording your stuff?
Oh. Well, I had this little 4-track analog cassette recorder that I had picked up because it's like, oh, well, bands use these to make demos and stuff. I should get one of these. And I picked up a used one, and I wanted to learn how to use it. And I had written a bunch of stuff. Plus there were just a bunch of just stupid musical jokes and experiments and things I wanted to play with. And so I had all these things I had recorded, and I was talking to a friend, and this was about maybe a year and a half into being in the SCA and actually like doing some bardic stuff and learning a bit more about um, some period music and that sort of thing as well, scratching the surface of that stuff. And I was talking to a friend, and I was like, I would love to put out a tape or something of this stuff, but you've heard me, I'm not very good. This was 1990, 91. And she was like, yeah, so what, who cares? It's about the fun. And when you get better, you just record it again and do it better next time. And those old tapes will be gone. And it's like, for the most part, she was right. Some people remember that Efenwealt, and most people have allowed me to grow up and become much better with my tools and that sort of thing. And it's like actually not this past Blibbering Humdingers album, but the one before that is called Fantastic Geeks and Where to Find Them. I was like super mega proud of, because I was like, I really loved what I did production wise, and pushed myself on a lot of the arrangements, and was doing new things with virtual drummers, and I pushed my bass player to like really do some stuff. So it's like I felt like a real arranger, composer, producer kind of artist at that point. And Kirsten Enor had done most of the heavy lifting on the songwriting end of it. So it was more like, oh, I need to treat this as someone else's work. It's not just my drivel that I'm spitting out. This is someone else's work, and I have to do a good job with it. So there's that. Well, and I also produced some CDs for Rosalind Jahan. We did 3 of those, and I did backing tracks and some backing vocals for most of the tracks on the CDs. And it was the same thing. It's like, this is someone else's work. I have to treat it with a lot of respect and do a job that they're gonna like out of this. So it really pushed me to be better in a lot of ways, and not just settle for stuff like I did on a lot of my earlier recordings, and still sometimes do on my own stuff.
So are you still, you're totally then self-producing, like with your own equipment and everything, or do you go to anybody?
No, these days I'm doing everything myself. I do have 2 CDs that different people recorded and mastered and engineered and that sort of thing early on, and they were pretty good. But the process of doing it myself is very fulfilling, even if the end product isn't mega professional and that sort of thing. Well, and so if you've critiqued some of my stuff, it's critique I respect, even if I don't necessarily agree with the things you're saying and the perspective you're coming from with some of that stuff. But I feel a lot better about what I'm doing.
Well, when we were talking, it was when I was working in radio. So
Yeah.
and I had to admit, when I worked in radio, I even told Heather Dale, I was like, I could never play your stuff on my station because the production quality is never good enough to be played on the air. When you listen to like Jethro Tull album CD and then listen to your stuff, like there's just this totally different polished sound that the studios enforce on those artists that you are free not to have. And so it means that you're not played on the local AAA radio station. Like, is that going to really pay your bills anyway? No.
Well, and that's like Lorena McKenna. You listen to her early stuff and it's good, oh, nice Celtic harp, la la, ooh, stuff. And then she signed on with Warner Brothers and started getting radio play, and boom, they got to do all this crap to her music and tons of delays and reverbs and saturate the hell out of it. And I'm just like, well, that's nice, but her old stuff's really good too.
Yeah. So I have to say that Minstrel by Trade was the very first album I ever bought in the SCA.
I'm so sorry.
And I don't know if you remember, but at Penzic one year, my son, when he was 3, okay, he's now 17,
Right?
came by and he was speechless with awe. And you sang Maddie Groves for him in your pavilion behind Camelot. Do you remember that at all?
I have very vague recollections of this happening. Yes.
But that has solidified for me that that's my favorite Efenwealt album of all time. So, but let's talk about the Blubbering Humdingers as well. How did that come into being? Who are, well, first for the audience who doesn't know, who are the Blubbering Humdingers and how did they come into existence?
It's blibbering.
Blibbering,
No
sorry.
big deal. No. Autocorrect always changes it to blubbering anyhow. So back in 2007, my wife and I owned a retail store here locally in Cary, beautiful scenic Cary, North Carolina. And we catered to Rennies and congoers and fans and people into pirates and Harry Potter and dragons and fantasy stuff and all that sort of thing. And it was jewelry and costumes and gifts and cards and t-shirts. And so it was sort of this sort of lifestyle store for fantasy nerds. And we were doing a lot of Harry Potter things. It sort of became a cash cow for us. 2007, 2008, selling wands and school robes and crystal balls. And we even started making flu powder with, well, I won't give you my secret recipe. Anyway, we were hosting some programs in the store, like trivia nights and things like that. And I was online looking around for like parodies and filks and that sort of thing about Harry Potter. And I found some stuff, but then I stumbled on these wizard rock bands, Draco and the Malfoys, the Moaning Myrtles, Harry and the Potters, the Parselmouths, Oliver and the Rememberalls, the Weasel King. He's so good. Anyway, I was like, oh my God, what the, and I dove down that rabbit hole. And Kirsten and I were like, well, we could do this. And we started writing some songs and we billed ourselves as the Blibbering Humdingers. It's a very obscure Luna Lovegood reference that's only like mentioned once or twice twice actually in the books. And I started having these wizard rock bands in to perform at our store and even sponsoring them at local libraries. And we started going to Potter conventions and performing and wizard rock festivals. We went to London to play at a convention there. We played the Quidditch World Cup in New York City one year. We played, it was an event called, oh my God, wizard, oh my God, I can't remember the name of the event now. I feel so stupid. It was a 3-day wizard rock intensive with like a dozen bands on the main stage and a dozen more playing a side venue over a 3-day weekend at a YMCA or a Girl Scout camp or something like that. And oh man, we used to go to that too. It was crazy and so much fun. So our first 3 Blibbering Humdingers albums are very Harry Potter centered, a little bit of other nerd stuff. And we started, as the Potter stuff people got less interested in it, we started doing more generic conventions, gaming conventions and filk conventions and that sort of thing. And branching out, writing stuff about some of our other favorite fandoms, Star Wars, Doctor Who, Firefly, Star Trek, superhero stuff, all of that, Dungeons and the Dragons. And then Joe Rowling started showing her ass on social media, and we decided, we don't want to support her anymore or prop her up in any way. So we don't do a lot of that anymore. It's still, we're proud of the work we did. We still enjoy the stories. There was just a big Potter convention up in New Hampshire we couldn't go to this year because of health and money issues. But all of the proceeds from that, they were donating to like the Trevor Project or some, trans supportive charity, just to stick it in Rolling's eye kind of thing. She doesn't care. She totally doesn't care.
Sad.
She has so much money to not care.
So I'm sorry, Lucas, I'm sure you have questions, but it's all about me right now.
I
Honor, how did you meet Honor? Your
In college.
amazing wife. So you met in college, and did you
So
drag her to the SCA?
kinda. I was actually, so I'd been in the SCA for about 2 years, and she and I were both in design school at NC State. She was in graphic design, and I was in architecture. So our faces were familiar to each other. We'd seen each other around that part of campus and had a lot of mutual friends and such. But a friend of hers like saw our demo at the student center and went and grabbed Kirsten and dragged her over, says, "These are your people, look." and she was right. And so Kirsten started coming out to things, and about 6 months later she and I started dating, and then 6 months after that we got engaged. So we're celebrating our 30th wedding anniversary in October.
That's awesome. I love you too so much. That makes my heart so happy. All right, Lucas, I'll let you ask a question. Go ahead.
Well, thank you. So in the bio, you have some of this and some of that and some of this and some of that. What was that rabbit hole like journey? That's I tend to ask people a lot about, like, what was their first thing in the SCA, and then how did that translate from thing to thing to thing?
Well, for me, the first thing in the SCA was the music. It's always been the most interesting thing in the SCA to me. And it was I got away from it a little early on, partly because like locally, anytime I asked people about, music from the period and that sort of thing, they kept pointing me to Scottish folk music and Oscar Brand albums and just like stuff that wasn't really from the period, but kind of tangential and SCA. And it's good stuff. It's stuff I like to this day. And the only person locally who was really into any kind of period music was kind of a snob about it. We became friends, and I've come to really respect. You guys probably know Robion. Master. He's a great guy, but back in those days, he's a little snippy about stuff. And I was this upstart 19-year-old punk with a guitar. And so we didn't gel really well, but I learned to really respect him and downright like the guy. I would call him a friend these days. So anyway, so early on, it was hard for me to find period music I could enjoy and really connect with and that sort of thing. So I drifted away from it a bit, and I started getting into some of the combat stuff. I did some combat archery for a while. I tried the heavy thing, and I'm a little guy. I'm 5'8". In those days, I was 125 pounds soaking wet. So I was really little. You put armor on me and I was like, I can't stand up. Kind of, I couldn't lift the shield because the buddy who was outfitting me just used these heavy ass wooden shields that weighed 20 pounds. And I'm like, no, I can't do it. So I took up combat archery, and that was fun. And then a bunch of friends, I had people around me saying, well, fencers are weird. They're not like the rest of the SCA. We should get rid of them. And I was like, really? They're weird? So I went over and I did some fencing stuff for a while, but this was still back in the days where we were still using epées and foils, and the Schlager blades started getting more popular, and I was less interested in that because I fenced a little in college and had some fun, and I was really only in it for the fun. I never looked at a period rapier manual, and those folks were really into the history of rapier stuff. At least locally, there was a lot of that. So I was like, yeah, I'll move on. And so there was a big call in Atlantia for that time for fencers to take up spear. Atlantia was allowing a spear only authorization. I was like, oh, I don't have to carry a shield. I can stand behind everyone else and just poke them. I'm in. So I did that for a while too, going to stuff. This was all in between singing, doing, silly bardic stuff. And also early on, I, of course, had met my wife, and her family actually, she comes from a long line of musicians, and her parents collected medieval and Renaissance instruments and taught music at university. They both had their doctorates in music, and had a set of Krummhorns and cornetos and a bombard and a raquette and a harpsichord her father had built, and a portative organ her father had built, and they ran early music concerts. So I got in real good there. So I finally could start fulfilling my early music needs, and getting access to stuff and instruments and music. That was fun. But all the other stuff, I was the seneschal for our local group for a number of years, and then I used to autocrat some events, and that was fun. Thinking about autocrating another one here. It's an event we used to run locally, and I've got a friend. It's like, I don't get off on the management of that stuff anymore. I would rather just say, well, here's my vision, you run with it, kind of thing, and have other people do more of the hands-on filing of the paperwork and getting the insurance and signing the checks and all that. It used to be fun for me to be the center of that organization, because I'm a very good project manager and I'm very good at organizing things and communicating and all that. But I don't want to do that in the SCA anymore.
So it's time to ask the big elephant in the room question. Boxers or briefs?
Thongs.
Nice. All right. No, really. It's a real question.
What? Oh.
Okay. Let's talk about when you gave back your Lorlet.
Okay.
What brought that on? What happened?
I guess a lot of people don't realize it was a long, hard process for me. If you've talked to anybody who's ever given up a peerage or something like that, it's not a thing. It wasn't a snap decision. It's not like one thing happened and I was just like, yeah, I'm done with you losers, I'm out of here, kind of thing. I'd had, you probably know Garrett Galbraith, Tim Jennings. I remember when he gave back his, and we talked a lot. And then when I was thinking a lot of things, he's like one of the first people I went to talk to about that. But what brought it on? Oh gosh, there was a long series of things. To sum it up, my SCA had become an obligation. I felt like going to events and doing certain things at events was an obligation to me. And it was making a lot of parts of the SCA not fun for me, especially when I saw people on the throne whom I not only disagreed with, but actively despised for the things they did, and being told, oh, well, you're supposed to defer to this person. You can counsel them, but you have to defer to them, kind of BS. And also just having a greater understanding of how power works in the SCA. And if you talk to people who've sat the throne, they say, well, the crown has no actual power, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh, well, guess what? You have a lot of social credibility. And in a social organization, that equates to power, from my perspective. Anyway, I look at the SCA power structures as incredibly patriarchal. And I despise patriarchal thinking. They talk about, oh, well, we have some women knights, and, the fighters fight for their queens. They're inspired by their queens and stuff like that. And okay, that's nice, but it's not a game that anybody can win, kind of thing. You have to be, I mean, if you're going to fight in Crown, you've got to be in top physical shape, and, that comes with certain kinds of, what's the word I'm looking for? Privilege. It's a big game of privilege. And all the privileges you have outside of the SCA follow you into the SCA. So if you have money, if you come from money, you can afford nice armor. You can afford to go to lots of events and practices. You can afford to train harder. If you've got natural athleticism, that gives you a big leg up, all that sort of thing. Men are generally bigger and have more muscle mass than women, which gives them an advantage in a game where we're pummeling each other and seeing who can be pummeled the hardest before falling on the ground. So it's a big pile of patriarchy that is, as someone who's never been particularly masculine, it offends the hell out of me. And, you talk to some of these kids. I've known a lot of people sat the throne, men and women both. They're really nice people. I know lots of people with great thoughts and love their kingdom and, love the dream and all that sort of thing. But it doesn't boil down to the fact that, only this small pool of people can actually sit the throne. The guy who can win the fight and his girlfriend / wife / lady he wants to put on the throne, kind of thing. Anyway, I was sick of all of that. I was like, oh, wow, this whole award structure is based on this guy winning a fight and who he puts on the throne. It's like, I don't really want to be a part of that anymore. So that was another big thing that it's like, I don't want to play into that power structure. So I have, and you can't do that when you're in the power structure. It's like, oh, well, I'm a peer, so I have certain social credibility and that sort of thing within the organization. So I felt like, well, I need to remove myself from that and set the example of someone who doesn't want to be part of that power structure. So that was a big thing. What was another thing? Little thing, microaggressions, we'll call them. You're at an event or you're talking with a friend or something like that, and they say, well, you're a Laurel, so you should do this. Or don't Laurels believe this? I heard that Laurels are like that. Why aren't you like that, kind of thing? And it bothered the hell out of me. I got tired of making excuses. Well, you should support me in this because you're a Laurel. I'm like, no, I shouldn't support you in that because I'm a Laurel. I don't want to support you in that. I have my own life. Thank you very much. So little microaggressions like that. What are some more examples of things like that? Just the obligation. Feeling like, oh, there's a vigil going on. I guess I should go to that, even though I don't know this person. I don't know anything about their work. I don't have time to learn anything about Kumihino. It's like,
Yeah.
So there's my rant.
So what was the process of giving it back? What were the actual steps you had to take?
Well, the only steps you actually have to take is to send a letter to the board of directors stating your intent. That's the only thing you have to do. I went the extra step because I was in fealty to the Crowns of Atlantia. It was sorry, I'm getting verklempt here. It was very important. Fealty is very important to me. I had fealty with my Pelican before I was elevated. And I had fealty to the crown. And it was very important to me to make sure that the Crown of Atlantia understood, that I'm not in fealty to you anymore. I'm not your servant. You can't just ask me to do anything, blah, blah, blah. So that was a very important part of the process to me, and releasing the remaining members of my household and making sure they knew what I was going through before I took those steps. They knew months and months in advance. But it also, for me, because we had a complete troll sitting on the throne of Atlantia on the time when I was starting this process to wait until the coronation of the next king and queen, who were people I kind of knew and knew would treat my feelings with greater respect than the troll who'd been sitting on the throne before him and her.
Now, Honor did not give back hers.
No, she's not as invested in it as I am. I've always taken my peerage way too seriously. I've always taken the SCA things, though I laugh off a lot of stuff. I always took my peerage very seriously and my responsibilities to the organization and to my, the people in my entourage and lineage and that sort of thing. And so even over the years, I tried many times to step back and say, well, I'm not going to do that. Look at those 7 old girls locked in the lavatory kind of stuff. I tried really hard to distance myself and take it easier, but then things would come up and I would feel, well, I got to peer up here and do my peer thing. And, it's up to me to be responsible here. I'm the grown-up. I'm the grown-up in the organization. So I feel very strongly about that, about peers, that they need to take responsibility if they are going to also, carry on the privileges of peerage. Does that make sense? It's a quid pro quo situation.
Yeah, and I think talking as your friend, I think you and I are very similar in that we feel things very strongly. Like we just feel things hard. And to me, being a peer, the act of just putting on my circlet is like, I gotta adult.
Yeah.
I can't be just, yo, what's up, Zoph? I gotta be Zoph, Mistress Zoph. I've gotta be an example, a shining example. And there are times that I've screwed up, but to me, it inspires me to be better. I think, I know that what you did inspired me as well, though, that you had the courage to do what I think some of us, including myself, don't have the courage to do. I'm still on the inside fighting the system. Yeah.
So what was the overall reaction? I mean, did you feel like suddenly blacklisted from things, or?
No, it is interesting though. So like as a peer, you get very used to people coming to you and deferring to your opinions, asking your advice, asking you to do things and that sort of thing. The last few years, the pandemic has happened in between, but I feel very much on the outside these days. Friends come to me and ask my opinions on things, or ask me to join in activities and that sort of thing, or people who are familiar with my work and want me there because it's like, oh, well, Efenwealt's a very good musician and an excellent entertainer. He should come to our thing and entertain us. Those people are still around and they still come to me, but people don't come to me just because I'm a Laurel anymore. And so on the one hand, you feel like a washed up has-been a lot in the organization. I also feel like, well, I don't have to go to a lot of things if I don't want to. I was going to go to an event here in Atlanta last weekend, but I looked at the forecast and it's like, oh, it's going to rain all day Sunday and Monday. It's like, forget that. I canceled my reservation and didn't go. Old Efenwealt would have gone because old Efenwealt probably had some kind of business that had to be in court for or something like that. It's like, oh, so-and-so's being elevated and so-and-so's getting this award and I need to be there for that kind of thing. Oh, I got to go to their vigil. It's like, and this Efenwealt is like, they're nice people. If I want to tell them something, I'll tell them something. So it's a lot less obligation, but so you certainly feel less special. I feel less special than I did when I was a Laurel. People come to me wanting me to teach classes or be their mentor or, just be present at whatever.
I was going to say, let's, I kind of want to get off the topic.
All right. We can get off the topic.
So
Okay.
let's talk about the music. I want to talk about some stuff that you've written, and tell you how so when I kind of found you, it was at the A&S tent at Penzig. And I was, the theater tent at Penzig. I would see, various people perform and whatnot. And so I started listening to your stuff. I have to tell you that I think not my favorite song necessarily, but my favorite general feeling, is Goober with the Doomback, because I camp in the bog. And I was like, you ever hear somebody say this old stupid bit? It's like they wrote the song of my heart. I was like, holy crap, I could just point. I could go like this and point at 17 people this song is about right now. So I love that aspect of it. So and all the D&D stuff and whatnot. Has that been well received by the society?
Yeah.
You really feel like that's kind of, okay.
People love that stuff.
You know what I mean? Because I wonder, you poke fun at the game, and some people don't particularly care for that too well, or you get a lot of people who are again, and this is sort of my newbie thing. I watch this a lot. You do something that's like D&D or geek related or whatnot, and it's not, because it's not the period stuff. It's not the stuff we should be doing. Do you know what I mean? Have you encountered any of that with?
Constantly. I think there's a lot of, I'll call it forgiveness for me in particular. I like to think I do it all, and I do it all pretty well. I do some, well, again, this is my opinion, of course. I do some good medieval and Renaissance material. I think I try to be very engaging and bring people into the music and help them understand it and that sort of thing. I think I do some good SCA stuff. Again, it's fun, entertaining. People can relate to it, that sort of thing. I feel like I do, some good, I'll call it filk. No, I won't, because in SCA, filk has a very specific meaning. Pop music, we'll call it nerd rock. I think I'm good at that, and I tend to just bring a little of that into the SCA. I try not to bring a whole lot of it, because I know people are, like you said, a lot of people are like, oh, do we gotta hear that? But like Natural 20 is probably one of my most requested songs in the SCA, because it's so relatable. And if I'm not playing it with the full band, with the drums and the keyboards and the bass and all that, people are, oh, okay, well, that's just like kind of acoustic rock kind of thing. It's like, we can connect to that. But I like to think there's a certain level of forgiveness for me, because I'll sit down at a fire or someone's camp, and I will go from, again, a modern rockish thing in, and then the next song I'll do will be like in medieval French with the elegant translation, and then I'll do something SCA related or historically related, perioid they call it sometimes, and I jump around, and I like to think I do all of those things pretty good.
So Fair Lady Atlantia is by far one of your most well-known songs, I think. And it's still the anthem of Atlantia as far as I know.
It's not an anthem, it's a love song.
All right, the love song. So where did that come from? Was that your love song to Atlantia?
I ripped off Doogie McLean's Caledonia.
Hush, you're...
What?
Hush, no, really?
Yeah, basically it came from the same place as Caledonia. And musically it works in kind of a similar way to that song. It has a lot of similarities, but I'm a huge Doogie McLean fan. And years ago, for an Atlantean Royal Bard competition, they were, one of the entries had to be a kingdom song, and I just got to thinking, so many kingdom songs are like fight, fight, rah, rah, smash them, we're the best, kind of oompa, oompa, written in SCA minor. And I was kind of like, I don't relate to those very well. That doesn't pump me up in any way. I've never gotten into the big fighty fight testosterone songs. It's like, I like love songs. I like sweet love songs. I like lullabies. I like songs that make people sit and think and that kind of thing. And like I said, I'm huge into Dougie MacLean. He's a Scottish folk singer. For people who don't know about him, should check him out. And so for that competition, I sat down and I wrote that song. I didn't win the Royal Bard competition that year,
Shut the
but
door.
I got a hell of a great song out of it. So
Yes, you did. All right. So I know that you have started playing dagger here.
oh yeah.
Well, so tell me, how did that come about? Well, you should
Oh,
explain what it is first for everybody.
so Dagger here is it's a fighting game, medieval style combat using padded weapons. So it's not like you would think of a LARP, a live action role playing game. You don't have a character, you don't have magic spells, there's no classes or races or anything like that. It is strictly a combat game. There's not much culture. It's a very flat organization. There are fighting bands that have some hierarchies within the individual fighting bands. But for the most part, it's organizationally, it's pretty flat. And groups have different personalities wherever you go, just like SCA. And I like it because it's someplace I can go and fight and have a great time out on the field and not get hurt. SCA combat is going to hurt me. I'm going to be 53 in July. Like I said, I'm 5'8". I still only weigh about 175 pounds. I'm a little guy. And most of the guys on the field are, 6 feet minimum, 250 minimum. They're big people. They can run right over me. My friend Gaston, he recently, he had the bariatric surgery a few years ago, and he lost, maybe 100 pounds, something like that. And he's about my size now, just taller. He's still close to 6 feet. And he put on armor several months ago and went out to fight. And his old tricks didn't work anymore. He couldn't just like muscle up to somebody with his shield and push him over and crap like that, because he didn't have the mass behind him to do that. He was like, I can't use my old tricks. How do I do this? Kind of thing. So yeah, so I feel like, SCA fighting, A, I'm going to get hurt. B, it's such a fustercluck. You get ready. I hate tournament fighting, first of all. So I only want to do big melees and wars and things like that, because I like to be part of a team, part of a unit kind of thing, because I'm a crappy individual. I'm not a martial artist by any stretch of the imagination. I go out to sing and fight and have fun and laugh and die spectacularly and be a beautiful corpse. But you lug all your armor out to something. You get there, you get inspected, you get out on the field, and you're sitting around for another hour and a half waiting for them to start the freaking battle that was supposed to start, at least an hour ago. And it's like, sorry guys, I ain't got time to sit here and sit around and do nothing and then run out there and get my ass handed to me in the first 45 seconds of the battle. So it's like, that's not a game for me. That's not the game for me. So I found Dagger here locally. There used to be a group here in Raleigh. I haven't played in a number of years, partly because of pandemic, partly because of some health issues. But in the autumn, I'm going to start heading down to Fayetteville again. It's about an hour. Their practices are on the north side of town, so I can get there in just over an hour. And I can run around and hit people with padded weapons. I don't have to wear any armor. They don't do headshots, so you're not going to get a concussion or, knocked unconscious or get, head trauma of any kind. It still happens now and then, but they do not target the head, which makes for a very different style. It's a much faster style of combat. And it's just so much more fun for me to play as a smaller person who is not martial arts. That said, there are martial artists in the organization in Dagger here who are very good at their weapons forms, and kick my ass every time I see them, kind of thing. It's a different game. I know a few people who play Dagger here and SCA and some other LARP games like Amped Guard or starts with a B. It's almost the same as Dagger here, and it's more popular on the West Coast. Whatever. I don't know. But it's fun. It's a good time. The only sad part is there's not much of a culture in Dagger here. So if you go to Ragnarok or one of the big war events or that sort of thing, yeah, people sit around fires and do some singing and, you know, beer fighting and things like that. There's a bit more of a fantasy element. You'll see some cool costumes, but they're much less interested in history. But you still find people who are interested in historical stuff. It's just a lot lower density of that. And there's not court. There's not all these social hierarchies you got to pay attention to and that sort of thing. It's more like a big frat party kind of thing. And most of the participants are 20-somethings and young 30s. Like when I went to Ragnarok about 5 years ago, I was one of the oldest people on site.
Nice though. All right, Lucas, do we have any questions from our audience?
Actually, I haven't checked in a while because I was paying a lot of attention.
I was too.
Nope.
All right.
Everybody just watching. Everybody's just passively watching.
I'm not that interesting.
No, you're too interesting. They're not asking questions. I have a question because I think it was at, it might have been Armistice. I don't remember. Maybe it was last year at Penzing. Do you do a lot of cosplay? Because your Witcher was awesome, and you know what I mean. So is that something you're also into, doing a lot of that?
Yeah. So I actually don't do a lot of what I would call hardcore cosplay, where I am doing a character and trying to do a screen accurate kind of thing. I do a lot of costume stuff. We used to be very into steampunk things, and I do all kinds of like elfin looks and fantasy looks and things like that. Even my Witcher, I'm not trying to be screaming accurate. I'm trying to like project an image, you know, I hope this outfit makes you think of The Witcher, because that's what I want you to think about. Now look at my butt.
Okay, if I have to. All right, believe it or not, we have 7 minutes to go. We told you this time would blow fast, and it always does blow past, excuse me. All right, last question. Shut up.
Phrasing. It's phrasing.
Are we doing that again? Phrasing. Okay. What can the SCA do better?
Oh, I was supposed to think about this one.
You were.
Well, and I've talked about it a lot. We could spend a lot less time thinking about our social hierarchies. Like when I do demos and things like that, I don't talk to people about awards and titles and crap like that. I talk to them about music and dancing and fighting and feasting and drinking and all that sort of thing. All the who you should bow to and what does that crown mean crap. Let them pick that up later, but don't let them think that that's the cornerstone of our organization. I had a Muggle friend once described the SCA as a social LARP, meaning, or a political LARP even. It's like, because if you get too caught up in that stuff, we call it politics in the SCA. It is not politics. Politics is how do we spend this money? Where do we rent a new storage shed? Who's going to autocrat this event kind of thing? That's politics. Most of what we call politics in the SCA is just stupid social interpersonal drama between people who should act like adults and should learn how to communicate with one another instead of waving their genitals around and trying to be self-important and crap like that. So putting a lot less energy into some of that hierarchy stuff, I think, would benefit us greatly. Yeah.
You feel like that's a cascade problem, that particularly is what causes a lot of the other issues people are having, like gatekeeping and things like that people have brought up on the show. Do you think it all stems from that social hierarchy that, that creates that class system?
Oh, well, I mean, it is a class
Yeah,
system.
yeah,
I think you answered your own question there.
sure, yeah.
I mean, it sets it all up. But no, I mean, there's gatekeeping in every fandom, in every community. There's people, well, like, well, you're not a real Star Wars fan because you don't know who Glup Shido is, that kind of thing.
Right? Because who cares? All right. We are out of time. Before we go, I want everybody to know a couple things. First of all, happy Pride Month to everybody. And if you are watching this show and are not in favor of that, you can go watch something else. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Second of all, our last show of the season will be in 2 weeks, and we are going to have a roundtable panel discussion of dependents. We will have an apprentice, a protege, a squire, and a whatever the mods call their people, because it's different in every freaking kingdom, it seems. So we will have the 4 of them versus one poor little old me, talking about what it's like to be a dependent in the SCA. So please tune in 2 weeks for that. Efenwealt, it has been a true delight to see you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
I have missed your face.
Well, I feel like you watch a lot of podcasts and you listen, there's always part 2s of people. I feel like we need a part 2 because we didn't get into the instruments and how you were, your love of that and whatnot. I feel like there's just a lot we didn't tap into that I feel like we could have. So I'd love to have
drag him out of Penzic. We'll go find him one night at Penzic and drag him around and fire walk and give him beer, and he'll tell us stories.
Awesome.
So if I wouldn't make you go to Bardic circles.
Thank you. I knew you loved me for a reason.
But aren't you supposed to make me go to Bardic circles though?
No, I don't do Bardic circles.
I don't like
okay.
Bardic
So
circles
secret.
either.
I'm not a big fan of Bardic circles. I firewalk. So when I go to SCA events, I'll wander at night and I come across the camp and be like, does anybody want a story? Does anybody want a song? And I don't drink, so all they have to do is give me water for it. But that's, to me, that our music, our stories are supposed to go to the people, not to some self-reflecting group.
Okay. I feel that.
Yeah.
A
All
conversation you and I have never had. We'll save that for the dependence discussion.
Yes. All right, everybody. You have been watching Simply SCAdian, no title required, with the most wonderful, amazing, pretty Efenwealt Wystle. Bye, everyone.